I was exhausted that night. Work had been hell, and all I wanted was to eat something good, watch some mindless TV, and pass out. I ordered my usual takeout, barely paying attention as I filled in my address. About 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was the delivery driver, sounding confused. He said someone had already taken the food. I frowned, sitting up. That didn't make sense. I hadn't opened my door yet. Then he repeated the apartment number. My stomach dropped. I had accidentally put the wrong unit number. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that the apartment he delivered to had been empty for months. I told him that wasn't possible, that no one lived there. He hesitated before saying, "Well, someone definitely answered." Older guy, kind of pale, looked at me weird but took the food and shut the door. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I knew for a fact that the place was vacant. The last tenant had moved out ages ago, and I'd even seen the landlord showing it to potential renters a few weeks back. I told the driver that, but he just laughed awkwardly and said, "Well, then I guess you've got a ghost neighbor." I forced a chuckle, but after I hung up, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up my neck. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe someone had finally moved in, and I just hadn't noticed. But the idea didn't sit right with me. The apartment was right down the hall from mine, and I passed it every day. There had never been any signs of life, no lights on at night, no sounds, no movement. Just an empty, dark unit. And yet, someone had answered the door. Someone had taken my food. I checked the peephole before opening my door. The hallway was empty. Stepping outside, I glanced toward the apartment in question. It looked the same as always, dark, lifeless. The door was shut. For a moment, I considered knocking, just to see if someone was really there. But a weird, instinctual fear held me back. Instead, I just went back inside, locked my door, and told myself I was overthinking it. That night, I couldn't focus on my show. My appetite was gone. The image of that older guy the driver mentioned kept looping in my head. Had I really just missed the fact that someone moved in? Or was there something else going on? I told myself I'd ask the landlord tomorrow. He'd know for sure. But deep down, I already had a feeling I wouldn't like the answer. The next morning, curiosity got the best of me. Before heading to work, I stopped by the vacant apartment and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Silence. Pressing my ear against the door, I strained to hear anything. Breathing, footsteps, movement. Nothing. I exhaled, relieved. Maybe the driver just made a mistake. But as I turned to leave, I heard it. Faint, almost imperceptible shuffling. A soft, dragging sound from inside the apartment. My blood ran cold. I froze, my heart pounding. There was definitely someone inside. I knocked one last time, louder. The shuffling stopped immediately, like whoever, or whatever, was in there knew I was listening. I took a step back, suddenly feeling exposed. My instincts screamed at me to leave, so I did. I walked quickly back to my own apartment and locked the door behind me. I didn't even breathe until I was safely inside. This wasn't normal. Someone was in that apartment, and they weren't supposed to be. All day at work, I kept replaying the sounds in my head. The dragging noise. The way it stopped the second I knocked again. It felt wrong, unnatural. I told a coworker about it, hoping for a logical explanation. He just shrugged and said, "Maybe you've got squatters." But his expression shifted when I told him how long the apartment had been empty. He didn't say it, but I could tell. The whole thing freaked him out too. By the time I got home, my nerves were shot. I told myself to let it go. Maybe it was a squatter. Maybe the landlord finally rented it out. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But that didn't explain the way the shuffling stopped when I knocked, like whoever was inside knew they'd been caught. Like they were listening. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the unease wouldn't go away. Every time I walked past that apartment, I felt it, that unnatural stillness, like the air around it was heavier. That night, I made sure my security camera notifications were on. Just in case. Around midnight, I woke up to a strange feeling. You know when you just know someone is watching you? That's exactly what it felt like. My room was dark, but I swear I felt eyes on me. I sat up, heart pounding, listening for any sound. Nothing. I told myself I was being stupid, but I still got up to check the peephole. The hallway was empty. I went back to bed but couldn't shake the feeling. Every noise in my apartment felt too loud. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, my own breathing. I turned on my side, facing the door, and pulled the blanket up to my chin like a kid. I don't know why, but I felt like if I just watched the door, I'd be safe. At some point, exhaustion won. I must have drifted off because the next thing I remember was my phone vibrating on my nightstand. I groggily reached for it, barely opening my eyes. My screen was glowing with a notification. Motion detected at your front door. Instantly, I was awake. My stomach twisted as I grabbed my phone, hands shaking. I tapped the notification, opening the live security feed. For a second, the screen was too dark to see anything. But then there was something. A shape. A person standing completely still in front of my door. My breath caught in my throat. The figure wasn't moving, wasn't knocking, just standing there. And then I noticed something in their hands. A plastic bag. My takeout bag. The same one from the night before. I wanted to believe it was some kind of prank, but my gut told me otherwise. No one would go through this much trouble just to scare me. My chest tightened as I watched the person slowly tilt their head, as if listening for something. For me. Then, without a word, they turned. The figure walked back down the hall, toward the vacant apartment. My heart pounded, so hard I thought I'd pass out. I kept watching, barely breathing. The door to the empty unit was open. Without hesitation, the person stepped inside. And then, the door shut behind them. I stared at my screen, horrified. I wanted to convince myself I had imagined it, but I knew I hadn't. Someone, or something, had taken my food last night, and now they had brought it back. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow in my apartment felt like it was watching me. By the time the sun rose, I had made up my mind. I needed to check that apartment one last time. I barely made it through work the next day. My head felt foggy from lack of sleep, and no matter how much coffee I drank, I couldn't shake the exhaustion or the paranoia. Every time I thought about that security camera footage, my stomach twisted. Someone had stood outside my door in the middle of the night, holding my food. Someone had walked back into that supposedly empty apartment. By the time I got home, the sun was starting to set. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the vacant apartment's door. It looked the same as always, unremarkable, abandoned. But now I knew better. Someone had been inside. Someone was still inside. I just didn't know who or what they were. I told myself I wasn't going to knock, that I wasn't going to let my curiosity win. But my feet had other plans. Before I even realized what I was doing, I was standing in front of the door again, my knuckles hovering just inches from the wood. My heart hammered in my chest as I forced myself to knock. 1, 2, 3 times. Then I waited. Silence. I exhaled, suddenly feeling stupid. Maybe whoever was inside was just a squatter and they were hiding, not wanting to get caught. I was about to turn away when something made my blood turn to ice. The door, it wasn't completely shut. There was the faintest crack, barely noticeable, but enough for me to see that the apartment beyond was pitch black. I stood there, frozen, as the air around me seemed to drop in temperature. A deep, instinctual fear clawed at my chest, telling me to leave now. But something else, a morbid curiosity maybe, kept me rooted in place. Slowly, I lifted my hand and nudged the door open just an inch more. The darkness inside was suffocating. The air smelled stale, like something old and untouched. There was no furniture, no lights, just an empty space. But then I heard it. Footsteps. Rushing toward me from the back of the apartment. I didn't think, I just reacted. I slammed the door shut, so hard the sound echoed through the hallway. My hands were shaking as I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my ears. For a few horrible seconds, I expected the door to fly open, for someone, to come sprinting out after me. But nothing happened. I turned and practically ran to my apartment, locking the door behind me. My hands were cold, my breaths coming too fast. What the hell had I just heard? I had no answers, just an overwhelming sense of dread that only got worse the longer I sat there in silence, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. That night, I left every light on. I didn't care how ridiculous it was. My security camera notifications were on full volume, my phone in my hand as I lay in bed, eyes locked on the screen. I told myself it was over, that whoever, or whatever, was in that apartment wasn't my problem anymore. But I was wrong. It wasn't over. Not even close. I woke up to my phone vibrating on my chest. My body was stiff, my mind sluggish from sleep deprivation. I blinked at the screen, trying to process what I was looking at. Motion detected at your front door. My stomach clenched. My hands trembled as I tapped the notification, pulling up the live feed. At first, all I saw was darkness. The dim hallway lights barely illuminated the figure standing at my door. But there they were, standing completely still, holding something. I squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of it, and then I saw it, the bag. My takeout bag from 2 nights ago. I stopped breathing. This wasn't possible. The food should have been gone by now, thrown out, eaten rotting. But there it was, in the hands of the unmoving figure outside my door. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling an overwhelming sense of wrongness settle into my bones. The figure wasn't knocking, wasn't saying anything, just standing there, holding my food. Then, after what felt like forever, they did something that made my blood run cold. They tilted their head slowly, as if listening. Not to the hallway, not to the building, to me. I covered my mouth with my hand, afraid to even breathe. I don't know how, but I just knew they could hear me. The way they stood there, the way their head cocked just slightly, like they were waiting for something. Then, without a word, they turned. They walked down the hallway, toward the vacant apartment. The door, which I knew had been shut, was now slightly open. Without pausing, the figure stepped inside, and then, the door shut behind them. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I just sat there, watching my phone screen, waiting for something else to happen. But nothing did. The hallway remained empty. The door stayed closed. The next morning, when the sun was up and I finally found the courage, I forced myself to check. I walked down the hall, stopping in front of the apartment. My hands were clammy, my heart hammering in my chest as I reached out and knocked. Nothing. I grabbed the doorknob and twisted. Locked. No signs of life. No sounds. No movement. It was like nothing had ever happened. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And even now, days later, I can't stop thinking about one thing. That apartment was supposed to be empty. So who the hell took my food?